Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm your host, Park Howell, and I'm so glad you're with us today because this is our 9th episode in the Brand Bewitchery series. And today we will cover Chapter 9 and or Step 9 of the story cycle system called Moral. How to declare your brand purpose to amplify your impact. And I am so glad you're here because I just love taking you through the story cycle system to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. This is the same program that has helped grow purpose-driven brands by more than 600%. So just imagine what it can do for you. So settle in, saddle up, strap on, whatever it takes. But I'm so glad you're here because I, today, am going to show you how to tell your story on purpose. Now, the 8 preceding steps in the story cycle system are designed to help you arrive at your brand purpose, essentially the moral of your story. Now, my brand purpose for the Business of Story is to help you live into and prosper from your most powerful stories. That is the higher level enlightened thinking that supports our unique value proposition that proclaims what we deliver, and that is to help you excel through the stories you tell, all so you will live into and prosper from your most powerful stories. Do you see how that works? The UVP is what you do, how you deliver differently in the market, but it all levels up to what that overall purpose is. What is your brand purpose about? Well, let me give you an example of our brand purpose, the moral of our brand story, in action. When I'm teaching the ABT Agile Narrative Framework and the 5 primal elements of a short story for big impact, 2 of our 3 proven story frameworks, I like to illustrate the concepts through various stories that demonstrate the power of these 2 amazing story structures. For instance, I love to pull up an interview from 2007 where Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were asked to tell the story behind Microsoft providing some much-needed technology to Apple in its early years. Listen to how left-brain tech titan Bill Gates tries to tell a story when right-brain storyteller Steve Jobs gets so frustrated that he takes over the tale and actually tells the story. We will break down the learning at the end of this episode, but for now, listen to this short give and take and hear firsthand how emotional storytelling trumps a message of logic and reason every single time.
Some people here, but I don't think most people know that there was actually some Microsoft software in that Apple II computer. Do you want to talk about what happened there, or how that occurred?
Yeah, there'd been the Altair and a few other companies, actually about 24, that had done various machines. But the 77 group included the PET, TRS-80,
Commodore.
and Commodore PET, TRS-80, and the Apple II. The original Apple II BASIC, the Integer BASIC, we had nothing to do with. But then there was a floating point one where, and I mostly worked with Woz on that.
Let me tell this story. So my partner, we started out with this guy named Steve Wozniak, brilliant guy. He writes this basic that is like the best basic on the planet. It does stuff that no other basic's ever done. You don't have to run it to find your error messages. It finds them when you type it in and stuff. It's perfect in every way, except for one thing, which is it's just fixed point, right? It's not floating point. And so we're getting a lot of input that people want this basic to be floating point. And like we're begging Woz, please make this floating point.
Who's we? How many people are in Apple?
Well, me. Yeah. We're begging Woz to make this floating point, and he just never does it. And he wrote it by hand on paper. I mean, he didn't have an assembler or anything to write it with. It was all just written on paper, and he'd type it in. He just never got around to making a floating point. Well, this is one of the mysteries of life. I don't know, but he never did. And so, Microsoft had this very popular, really good floating point basic that we ended up going to them and saying, help.
I thought it'd be fun to share this one example with you, and it's one of among hundreds of different stories that I use to make my points in my in-person, virtual, and hybrid mastery courses and keynotes. In fact, over the course of a full-day training, I will use up to 30 stories to demonstrate, model, and make concrete the storytelling concepts I'm coaching. That way it supports my brand purpose of the business of story, and as you know by now, that is to help you live into and prosper from your most powerful stories. Your brand purpose and how you shout it to the world is, of course, what Chapter 9 of Brand Bewitchery is all about. So let's get going, and remember that at the end of this show, I will walk you through the learning from the Jobs versus Gates storytelling episode and how you can apply it immediately in your world to help you, well, excel through the stories you tell. Chapter 9, Moral: How to Declare Your Brand's Purpose to Amplify Your Impact. Quote, I believe that if people got out and ran a few miles every day, the world would be a better place. And I believe these shoes were better to run in. People, sensing my belief, wanted some of that belief for themselves. Belief, I decided, belief is irresistible. End quote. Phil Knight, founder of Nike. Telling your story on purpose. When I think of consumer commodities, I think of bottled water, aspirin, and vodka. Not necessarily in that order. But how do you create meaning for an inherently meaningless product to create a premium offering? You craft a compelling brand story based on the purpose that is expressed through your product. That's what this chapter is all about, finding the purpose that propels your brand. Because as you'll soon see, your customers buy your story before they buy your offering. This brand story concept has never been more underscored to me than by listening to celebrity Dan Aykroyd pitch his Crystal Head vodka on the Joe Rogan Show. You can learn a ton from this gifted brand storyteller about how to spin meaning into your merchandise. The entertaining 2-hour episode rollicks through his beliefs and experiences. Aykroyd spoke at length about his religion of following spiritualists and mediums. He wrote Ghostbusters because he was raised in Ottawa, Canada, in a family that routinely performed seances and hung out with mediums. He believes in Sasquatch and has had 3 of his own close encounters with unidentified flying objects. But Aykroyd started the show shielding his premium vodka called Crystal Head. This award-winning vodka is an expression of his purpose, which is, as I understand it, to tap into the unseen forces to elevate your understanding and therefore your life. When it comes to selling an expensive commodity, I can't think of a bigger task than hawking a $55 bottle of vodka. According to the Planet Money Show on National Public Radio, a federal law requires all vodka to be pretty much the same. Vodka must be distilled or treated until it is, quote, without distinctive character, aroma, taste, or color, end quote. Some distillers will add flavor packs, which is a separate category outside of, quote, pure vodka. The Planet Money team wanted to test this, so they bought some vodka concentrate and added water to create their homemade booze. Then they sent it to the White Labs in San Diego for a comprehensive spirits test. Along with their bathtub batch, they sent a sample of the cheapest vodka they could find and a sample of the ultra-luxury brand Grey Goose. Guess which one of these 3 vodkas came in third for taste? Yep, Grey Goose. Intoxicating brand storytelling. Given this insight, I was intrigued by how Aykroyd told the story of his ultra-premium Crystal Head vodka. His vodka has been on the market for 11 years and is in 70 countries with over 50 million bottles sold. It won the gold medal for excellent taste at the 2013 Prod Expo exhibition in Moscow out of 400 vodkas. But what is even more impressive than the success of his tasteless spirit is his brand storytelling. Aykroyd extolled the virtues of their process on the Joe Rogan Show.
And what we do is we take peaches and cream corn from Chatham, Ontario, and we put it in the truck in the mash, and we ship it 95% alcohol volume at that point, and we take it over and we put it in the ferry boat, and we bring it over to the distillery in Newfoundland, Canada, one of the last state-owned stills in the world. And why are we there? Because the water from the original Wisconsin glacier is under Newfoundland. So vodka's an old Russian word for water. And great,
really?
Yeah, and great vodkas have sweet water. I want you to just take a sip, and then I'm going to make a nice crystal draw. But here's our notes.
Cheers, sir.
Just a sip.
Aykroyd went on to describe how his vodka has a sweet vanilla dry crisp with a kick of heat off the finish, flavor profiles created by Anthony Dias Blue. But wait, the brand's storytelling only gets better. Aykroyd says that after distilling, they filter their vodka by pouring it over Herkimer diamonds. Not surprisingly, Rogan jumps on the thought. You pour it over diamonds? He asks. I'll let the former Bassomatic salesman take it from here as he shares with you how they craft brand meaning for their vodka through diamonds and UFOs.
We distill and we filter, and we pour it over Herkimer diamonds.
Diamonds?
Yep.
You pour it over diamonds?
We do. We pour it over the Herkimer semi-precious stone, and the Herkimer semi-precious stone is one of our last purification processes. Now, if you asked a high school professor, what does pouring alcohol over diamonds do to the alcohol, they'd probably say, well, nothing. But our stones, after certain pours, a certain number of pours, they turn yellow, and we have to bleach them, clean them, or replace them. The Herkimer diamond is found in an anomalous area of upstate New York, also in Afghanistan and in Oaxaca, Mexico. They're found. They're little semi-precious, double-ended crystals, and people love the taste of the vodka poured over the stones. Now,
is there a chemical reaction that causes the stones to turn yellow, or is it?
You'd have to sit with a chemistry professor and say, why does the alcohol turn the crystals yellow? Is it doing anything? Is it purifying it? We've done flavor profiles where we pour it over the stones and give it to people, and we don't pour it over the stones and give it to the people, and they like it better poured over the stones. Now, why I like the Herkimer Diamond is, of course, because it's near Griffiths Air Force Base, Rome, New York.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that was where a lot of scrambles went up in the 70s and 80s against whatever was coming and going in the mountains there, Pine Bluff, or Pine Bush, New York, Pine Bush, New York. So I thought, this is great. Herkimer diamonds from that area associated with ETs, the Navajo, the Aztec, the Anasazi. They said that these skulls came down to them from the Star Children. They were given to them as scrying devices to help the tribe move forward, to give positive energy to the tribe. And so I thought, perfect tie-in. We pour our vodka over Herkimer diamonds. We're tied in a little to the extraterrestrial legend there with the skull, and it's the neat kind of bow to our product. But the most important thing is that the fluid in the bottle matches the beauty of the bottle, and the bottle is to sell the idea of purity and enlightened thinking, enlightened drinking, which was what these skulls were made for. Gosh, it's good even without the orange juice.
Dan Aykroyd, you might be the greatest salesman that's ever lived. I'm sold.
The thinking behind the skull. Crystal Head Vodka is brilliantly packaged in an artisan skull bottle designed by notable Texas artist John Alexander, inspired by the crystal skull legend. The crystal skulls are human skull hardstone carvings made of clear or milky white quartz, also called rock crystal. According to National Geographic, many believe these skulls were carved thousands of years ago by an ancient Mesoamerican civilization. Others think they may be relics from the legendary island of Atlantis, or proof that extraterrestrials visited the Aztecs sometime before the Spanish conquest. However, these claims have been refuted for all the specimens made available for scientific studies. But what a story! And the folks at Crystal Head Vodka are undeterred. They have grown a community of bartenders they call Startenders, who share their unique experiences with this otherworldly brand. Quote, "We are the vodka for the creative spirit," Aykroyd declares. He said the spirit comes from two artists, a writer and a graphic artist who is also a designer, painter, and sculptor. And then he defined the purpose behind the Crystal Head brand. Enlightened drinking for the creative spirit. This is the power of a brand story told on purpose. Crystal Head Vodka is a clear example of how brand storytelling can levitate your brand's position in the marketplace for incredible success. Because, as Ackroyd has proved, people will buy your story before they buy your product. And while you might be calling BS on his story, Ackroyd is simply sharing his true beliefs in mystical forces to sell his spirits. It's authentic to him, whether you believe it or not, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you do believe, well, the sky's the limit. The purpose of this chapter is for you to declare what your brand ultimately stands for beyond just making money. I call it the moral of your story. As you will see, it's critical to declare your brand purpose to connect with today's jaded consumer. They just don't believe in the myth of profit-grabbing brands anymore. What your customer wants. Several studies, including one by Accenture that interviewed 30,000 consumers around the world, found that 63% are buying goods and services from brands that reflect their personal values and beliefs. In America, nearly 7 out of 10 consumers say they are more loyal to purpose-driven brands, according to the 2018 Cohn-Porter Novelli Purpose Study. But most brands have a hard time articulating what they stand for beyond just making money. They're not connecting with this ardent and growing customer mindset. Internally, employees are rising up to support the purpose of their organizations, and sometimes even pushing back. I was recently driving home from a workout and heard on NPR that 1,000 Google employees have petitioned their company to not compete for a lucrative contract with the federal government to use its data science on the U.S.-Mexico border. They feel basic human rights and privacy are at stake, a divisive social issue as of this writing. Providing their big data services for this endeavor would fly in the face of Google's original purpose, quote, "Don't be evil," end quote. When you have a clearly focused purpose for your organization, these kinds of issues are easier to navigate because you can vet them through a simple question. Does this initiative work or not work to support our purpose in the world? Your brand purpose is the ultimate expression of the sentiment you've been building on throughout the story cycle system. It's not what you make, but what you make happen that your audiences will buy into and align with. The sky's the limit. The 4-star Air Force general raised his hand. He was sitting in the top row of a packed 180-person theater at Joint Base Andrews outside of Washington, D.C. "Yes, sir," I acknowledged from the stage. I had just completed a half-day Business of Story workshop to help generals with their storytelling skills. We were in the final Q&A. He cleared his throat and said, "I have a correction to the first story you told this morning." Oh boy, I thought. I must have messed up a call sign or a squadron number or mispronounced a jet fighter reference. I found generals are particular about such details, especially when uttered by civilians. I was jumpy because I've never served in the armed forces. I admit this at the beginning of my workshop. That's why I open up each Air Force storytelling workshop with a connections story. I explain that although I've never served, I did marry into an Air Force family that has had a tremendous impact on me. The story is about my wife Michelle's astonishing experience following the terrorist attacks of 9/11. She prayed to her long-deceased father, Major James Reynolds, asking him for solace after the falling of the Twin Towers in Manhattan. A week later, Michelle was shopping for Legos for our boys in a Tuesday morning store, coincidentally, the Tuesday morning following the previous Tuesday morning attack. But what she found stopped her in her tracks. It was an exact model replica of the F-86 fighter, right down to his name printed under the cockpit. Her dad flew as the squadron commander of the Sky Blazers demonstration team, the predecessor to today's Air Force Thunderbirds. To me, this was a sign that he was still looking after his little girl, even as he is flying through the heavens. When I finished this story, I asked the generals for permission to be their storytelling wingman. They give it. Now, fast forward 3 hours to the general at the back of the auditorium. In his commanding voice, he boomed, "You stated that you have never served our country." "That's right, sir." "Well, from what I can tell, you have served this Air Force with honor today, and for that, I commend you." I stood there as the theater erupted in applause. For a moment, I was shell-shocked. A chill ran down the back of my neck. I looked at my toes. A smile peeled across my face. No finer compliment about our work have I ever received. His reaction is the result of our brand purpose at the Business of Story, the reason we do what we do that is bigger than coaching and teaching storytelling. We are brand story strategists who deploy our proprietary story cycle system to help leaders of purpose-driven brands clarify their stories, to amplify their impact, and simplify their lives. In addition to the story cycle system, we teach the and, but, and therefore agile narrative framework and the 5 primal elements of powerful anecdotes that grow individuals as storytellers and help them build storytelling cultures within their organizations. We share our applied science and bewitchery of storytelling through speaking engagements, masterclasses, and an 8-week deliberate practice program. Plus, we consult one-on-one to help selected clients craft their brand story strategy. This book was written to show you how to develop your brand story on your own. We even prove our impact by helping you understand, plan, and measure the ROI of your brand and business storytelling endeavors. Everything I've just mentioned about the Business of Story is what we make, what we coach, teach. But what we make happen is vastly more rewarding. Our singular purpose is to help people live into their most powerful stories. With the Air Force, it's to help their leaders excel through the stories they tell. This is what we believe. What we do and how we do it simply supports what we believe. I learned this from leadership guru Simon Sinek in his now legendary 2002 TEDx Tacoma talk, which is nearing 45 million views on YouTube. How leaders inspire action. He said, "People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. What you do simply proves what you believe." Sinek said that most brands communicate from the outside in. They talk about what they make and how they make it. Rarely do they get to the why, which is their purpose. Take life insurance, for instance. Most life insurance ads say something to the effect of, "We're one of America's largest, oldest insurers, and we have a variety of life insurance plans for any need. Want to buy one?" Now ask yourself, what differentiates Liberty Mutual, MetLife, and Northwestern Mutual from the rest of the market? Nothing. Exactly. Well, don't let this happen to you. Building belief. We recently helped Phoenix-based commercial contractor Wilming define its brand story to reveal its purpose. They operate in the commoditized commercial construction industry. All of their competitors look and sound the same, so we started asking questions. What is Wilming? Well, a commercial contractor. How do you operate? They specialize in tenant improvement, ground-up construction, and renovation in commercial buildings. Why do they do it? Wilming believes that people thrive when they find their genuine place of purpose, especially in how and where they contribute to their careers, families, and communities. Therefore, Wilming exists for people to build their genuine place of purpose. This idea of brand purpose was something that was lying latent within me early in my career. I sensed it, but I couldn't quite articulate it. Sinek's talk immediately released the idea of brand purpose, which fit perfectly in the story cycle system as the moral of your story. Here's how Wilming is guided by the beliefs and values of its brand story to help people build their place of purpose. 1. Show up every day as your genuine self. 2. Attract talent with the right aptitude and attitude. 3. Onboard new employees to set them up for success. 4. Wilming University provides robust, continuous training to grow talent, character, and culture. 6. Pre-construction efforts to ensure the integrity of every project. 7. Altruistic approach to customer service. Care more than seems reasonable. 8. Generous leaders in thought and action for the industry. 9. Invest in the community through philanthropy. And 10. Always do your genuine best. Wilming's powerful purpose was arrived at by identifying the organization's why, which is captured in their UVP, or unique value proposition. We build on character to create genuine success. Their purpose-driven story even redefined what they do. Instead of being a commercial general contractor, which is a statement of commodity in and of itself, they are positioning themselves as the commercial genuine contractor. How they do this is captured in their position statement. Wilming is the commercial general contractor when building with character is what you value most for the integrity of your project and the genuine success of your people. These brand story elements come together to craft their ultimate goal of helping people build their place of purpose. Let's re-examine the brand purposes of the companies that you have been introduced to throughout this guidebook. Heirloom is an all-natural allergy supplement, but its greater purpose is to help people inhale a healthy dose of life. Let's take it a step further. The purpose of Oasis LLC, the makers of Heirloom, is to ameliorate human suffering. Eco Driving Solutions provides fleet driver training programs to help fulfill its purpose of helping people arrive healthy, happy, and safe. While most people think of Goodwill Industries as running thrift stores that fund their workforce development programs, they truly exist to help people realize the treasure of a good job. Adelante Healthcare is a community health center fulfilling its purpose of providing sustainable health care for all. Global Water is a water utility, but it exists to help people access the renewable resources of water so they can flourish. Red Bull exists to give wings to people and ideas. Airbnb exists to help people feel like they belong anywhere. Pret Auto Partes sells used cars to at-risk buyers, but this is just the brand's vehicle to serve its purpose of helping people get back on the road to financial freedom. Crystal Head Vodka exists to help people enlighten their creative spirit. From the list above, which is more intoxicating to you, the products or the purpose? Purposeful. In 2011, an important book was published which further inspired the idea of a brand purpose. It's called Grow: How Ideals Power Growth and Profit at the World's Greatest Companies. Jim Stengel, its author, used the term brand ideals to describe what I call the moral of your story in marketing. His book asks the following questions. What do you exist to do that is greater than your product or service? How are you bettering mankind through your offering? What compelling fundamental need in the lives of your heroes do you service? After years of research, Stengel uncovered 50 companies that, by passionately following their brand ideals, outperformed the S&P 500 by over 400% in the 2000s. What's even more amazing is that this was during the most significant worldwide recession in modern history. Stengel's list of 50 top-performing companies includes organizations like Accenture, which exists to help people accelerate ideas to achieve their dreams. Apple exists to empower creative exploration and self-expression. Heineken exists to help men be worldly, resourceful, confident, open-minded, and cosmopolitan. Dove exists to help women celebrate their inner beauty. Pampers exists to help mothers care for their babies and toddlers and foster their children's healthy, happy development. With each of the 50 companies, you can look at how they approach business and quickly fill in the blank to this statement. Company X exists to blank. Their purpose reveals their higher ideal and why they're in business in the first place. We all know Nike's fundamental call to adventure. Just do it. Nike exists to awaken the champion within us all. This brand ideal is at the heart of everything Nike stands for. It was particularly well revealed in a remarkable TV commercial they ran during the 2012 Summer Olympics called Find Your Greatness. This story relies on minimalism. It has no edits, but one 60-second shot that seems like several minutes of a heavy young man jogging on a country road. The narration intones as follows.
Greatness. It's just something we made up. Somehow we've come to believe that greatness is a gift, reserved for a chosen few. For prodigies. For superstars. And the rest of us can only stand by watching. You can forget that. Greatness is not some rare DNA strand. It's not some precious thing. Greatness is no more unique to us than breathing. We're all capable of it. All of us.
The spot ends with a graphic that reads, Find your greatness. The moral of the story is to believe in yourself, to just do it. But just as Nike encourages the average athlete and weekend warrior to seek to be their best, you don't have to be a superstar brand to build a powerful purpose that helps you beat your competition. Just look inside yourself. Why do you do what you do? What was the inspiration behind creating your brand in the first place? Look to your origin story. Unearth the moments that have shaped who you are today. How did your curiosity, beliefs, and values materialize from those moments? For want of a story. In August 1485, King Richard III died during the Battle of Bosworth. William Shakespeare told the story in a history play around 1591. This is when King Richard's horse was struck down on the battlefield, and he reportedly said, a horse, my kingdom for a horse." This world-altering incident also spawned a proverb titled, "For Want of a Nail," which teaches the importance of sweating the small stuff, like a horseshoe nail, if you want to maintain your kingdom. Here it goes. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the message was lost. For want of a message, the battle was lost. For want of a battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horseshoe nail. I love this proverb for its poetic truth, which is as powerful today as it was in the 15th century. Many brands want to take shortcuts with the development of their story. Congratulations to you, because you've gotten through 9 of the 10 steps of the story cycle system. Your purpose-driven brand story will make all the difference between ruling your kingdom or succumbing to your competition. So I pose to you my version, which I call For Want of a Story. For want of a story, the purpose was lost. For want of a purpose, the vision was lost. For want of a vision, the passion was lost. For want of passion, caring was lost. For want of caring, the mission was lost. For want of a mission, the business was lost. All for the want of a simple story. Now it's your turn. What's your purpose-driven brand story? Do this exercise to arrive at your purpose. Here's how it shakes out for the business of story. Why? We believe people are more inspired, innovative, and industrious when they connect through their most powerful stories. How? We use proven narrative frameworks to awaken within you the primal power of story, to enrich your life and those you serve as you become an intentional and influential storyteller. What? We are communication experts at the Business of Story. The Business of Story exists to help people live into their most powerful stories. Now it's your turn to fill in the blanks. Why? How? What? Our brand exists to help people do what? Final thoughts. You've been through the 9 steps of the story cycle system expressly designed to help you define your brand purpose. It's like archaeology. You might even call it brandthropology. You have been digging and sifting through all your operational and aspirational elements to reveal why you do what you do. On Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your purpose is at the top of the pyramid, representing enlightenment. Everyone you sell to pretty much has their basal physiological and safety needs met. As social beings, they crave belonging and esteem, which you have built for your brand through the 8 previous steps of the story cycle system. Those critical story exercises have been the building blocks for where you find yourself now, in that rarefied air of enlightenment. So what does it all mean and why are you here is the question your audiences will ask themselves, at least subconsciously. Your brand purpose is the answer to that question, the moral of your story. Finally, your brand purpose is the North Star that will guide everything you do from here on, navigating you into a more powerful story. Welcome to humanity. Additional resources. Explore ways to express your brand's purpose at businessofstory.com/purpose. Listen to Aveen Sete Tafoya on how a purpose-driven brand story will increase the health of your organization. And watch my quick explanation video on how to identify your brand's promise, gift, and personality. Story on activity. Think of 3 of your favorite brands and ask yourself what their purpose is. They exist to help people do what? What happens when you clarify your brand story and its purpose? Well, you amplify your impact and actually simplify your life. I think about that when listening to the Bill Gates and Steve Jobs storytelling example. Apple has always seemed to have a clear brand purpose of building the best products in the world that enrich people's lives. I believe Jobs' story reflects that North Star, the moral of the Apple story. On the other hand, Microsoft to me has never had a crystal clear purpose other than, world domination with their tech. And perhaps it's this lack of clarity, which always comes from the top, that is the reason why Bill, way back in 2007, stumbled so humbly through his answer. To be fair, though, Bill has apparently received a ton of storytelling training because he is a much better communicator than he used to be. Listen to how he fumbles for direction and inserts a bunch of superfluous information right up top, which completely obfuscates the message and confuses the audience. I mean, how does it make you feel when you listen to it?
Some people here, but I don't think most people know that there was actually some Microsoft software in that Apple II computer. Do you want to talk about what happened there, how that occurred?
Yeah, there'd been the Altair and a few other companies, actually about 24, that had done various machines. But the 77 group included the PET, TRS-80,
Commodore.
and Commodore PET, TRS-80, and the Apple II. The original Apple II BASIC, the integer BASIC, we had nothing to do with. But then there was a floating point one where, and I mostly worked with Woz on that.
Let me tell this story. So Woz.
When you're watching this clip on YouTube, you can see a decidedly frustrated Jobs finally interrupt his friendly competitor and take over the story by actually telling a story. Listen for compelling storytelling elements that underscore what we teach, and that is that the power of story rests in the specifics, including a singular character at the center of the story, descriptive words, and even superlatives that heighten the tension and expectation built into the tale, the 3-act structure of setup, problem, and resolution, as Aristotle would say, a beginning, a middle, and an end, the casual, almost self-effacing way Jobs shares his story, and the 2 ABTs embedded in the telling that propels the story forward, ultimately landing on the moral of its story. And to me, that is Apple will do whatever it takes, even going to its competition for help, to support its brand purpose of building the best products in the world that enrich people's lives. Even Jobs' story enriched this audience in its telling. Take a listen.
My partner, we started out with this guy named Steve Wozniak, brilliant guy. He writes this basic that is like the best basic on the planet. It does stuff that no other basic's ever done. You don't have to run it to find your error messages. It finds them when you type it in and stuff. It's perfect in every way, except for one thing, which is it's just fixed point, right? It's not floating point. And so we're getting a lot of input that people want this basic to be floating point. And like we're begging Woz, please make this floating point.
Who's we? How many people are in Apple?
Well, me. We're begging Woz to make this floating point, and he just never does it, and he wrote it by hand on paper. I mean, he didn't have an assembler or anything to write it with. It was all just written on paper, and he'd type it in. He just never got around to making a floating point. Well, this is one of the mysteries of life. I don't know, but he never did. And so, Microsoft had this very popular, really good floating point basic that we ended up going to them and saying, help.
That is just one example of how we teach our 3 proven storytelling frameworks to support our purpose of helping you live into and prosper from your most powerful stories. If you have found this episode helpful, please share it with anyone you know who will benefit from becoming a more confident and persuasive communicator by telling their stories on purpose. Our theme music is composed by Darius Holbert, marketing by Marissa Hill, and the show is edited by Caden Howell. If I can help you and your team excel through the stories you tell, hit our contact page at businessofstory.com for information on in-person, virtual, and hybrid mastery courses, keynotes, and I even have a do-it-yourself storytelling training just for you. Please join us next week when we will cover the 10th and final step of the story cycle system called Ritual. This is where you build repeat customers and get them to share your story with their world, leveraging the most powerful form of advertising there is, and that's free word-of-mouth marketing. Until then, I hope the brand purpose of the Business of Story resonates with you as you remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. Make that one epic. Thanks so much for listening.